You may be seated. Something you've heard me say over the years is I love the battle. It is a battle. Battles and war is not fun, but you have to love the battle. Abel loved his God, knew that the sacrifice would come from the Messiah. Cain had religion and works. And Cain was not a happy man because you're never happy with religion. And Abel went to him. Actually, Cain went to Abel for help. And Abel said, it's relationship. It's relationship. It's relationship with our God. It's relationship with our Creator. It's a relationship with the Messiah that's going to come. It's relationship through the Spirit of the living God. And he was a warrior as he pled to his brother, and his brother struck him down. Then there was Enoch, the seventh generation from Adam. And he was a warrior. He just warred and prayed. There's so many things that are about him that we don't know are true, that are written in the book of Enoch, which seems to be some truth and some not. But there's things, everything from his intelligence, that he's the one that invented 60 seconds, 60 minutes, 24 hours. Did you know that? That he was an expert on the planets and all those things moving, so he could figure that out. But he also walked with God in an incredible way. And I don't know if it's true. It says that he had all kinds of encounters with angels and with God and all these things since he was a child. But he was a warrior all of his life, warring. I'm sure he stuck out like a sore thumb to the world. Who is this weird, crazy guy that's in love with this invisible God? Then there was Noah, a preacher of righteousness. Nothing sticks out worse than a preacher that preaches righteousness in the midst of sin everywhere. And yet him and his sons kept putting those logs on that ark, kept preparing things, working hard, being a warrior, preaching the gospel, readying it for the flood. But then there was another person, the grandfather of Noah, Methuselah, which means I'll be gone when it happens, named by his daddy, Enoch. And for almost 1,000 years this man lived, and he was preaching up a storm. He was letting everybody know, and he never quit. And then he died 1 year before the flood. Abraham, who lived in a house in a city, and he struck out into a new land, a new promise, in great danger of the people that lived there, that served and worshiped other gods, a culture that could be violent, occultic. And yet he struck out. Even Jacob, who wrestled with an angel. They were all warriors. God is looking for warriors. Do not confuse meek with weak. People do that. They say Christians are weak because they're meek. No, meek is strong. Meek is God's power under control. Meek is having faith when others fear. Meek is walking righteously when others compromise. Meek is being strong when others are wavering. Meek and weak. Do not confuse those two. God's warriors are to be meek, not weak. Now let's proceed on with warriors. Aftershocks to do with the fast. Let's look at Jesus on his fast first, Luke 4:1. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led around by the Spirit in the wilderness. When you're on a fast, you're led around. When you go on a fast, you think it's going to be a straight line. This is what I'm going to do. And it doesn't go in a straight line. It goes all over the place. This way, up mountains, down valleys. You have a mountaintop experience, then you crash to the valley. You're crawling on hard rocks. You're wanting to hear the voice of God, and he's not there. His voice isn't anyway. Temptations come your way. Persecutions come your way. Trials come your way. Sanctification of the soul, which is the biggest part of a fast, takes place. And you have to trust. Just rest in him. But the good thing on that fast, as you're being humbled, you can feel his presence. You have a special grace. A grace not to eat. A grace, the temptations don't stop, but you have a grace to push them back. You have a grace to keep moving in trust when you don't know for sure what's happening. Matthew 4:2. I shared this with a few people. And after he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he then became hungry. Then he became hungry. And then it says, then he was tempted. When you get hungry, I told you, that means at a long fast, it means if you're not going to eat, you're going to die. But that's not the key word. The key word is after. The fast is done. That special grace not to eat is not there. That special grace to resist temptation is not there. Yes, there is grace there, but that very special grace. It's kind of like you need more grace in the war than outside the war. But so what's happening? Now he doesn't have that special grace. The fast is over. And the devil shows up. He's been tempted for 40 days. And now Jesus is starving. If he doesn't eat, he will die. And he's in the middle of the wilderness, and he doesn't have that special grace anymore. The next thing that happens to him is the devil tempts him with the 3 great temptations. He doesn't have that special grace anymore. And sometimes when we come off of something, a time with God, whether it's going to a retreat up in the mountains, a Christian retreat, or a special time alone with God in prayer, or after a fast, or even after a service, we go, wow, this is great. I'll always do it right. And then you go, oh, back to the real world. That's what I love about Jesus. No matter what we've gone through, it's nothing compared to what he went through. And after this time, he was still a warrior. Because sometimes we go, battle's over, yay! Let's go to Applebee's. Not pointing fingers at the young people. I got lists of, I'm going to eat this. I'm not knocking that. That's great. I had the same thing. But not Jesus. He's still in the war. He's still in the battle. He never lets up on the battle for 33 and a half years. He's constantly in the war. But he's meek. He's not macho. He's meek. But he's definitely not weak. So if you've gone through anything trauma, a little bit you think, I thought everything would be cool. So many young adults on Friday said, I was waiting to hear the thundering voice of God this week. And he wasn't there. It's just not, it's a battle after battle after battle. The only time you're going to escape, do you ever notice that when you fast and pray or do something like that, your flesh begins to succumb to the Spirit? And now that's why it's easier to resist by the grace of God. Temptations, whatever they may be, feeling His presence. But then when you're done and you're back eating, welcome to the real world. And your flesh is right there again. And you think, I thought I would never fight that temptation ever again. Now what's going on is the only time God wants you to know when that battle is over in the flesh is when you're dead and you're out of the body. Then you won't, that's why heaven's gonna be so cool. You won't have this body. He knows where that bathroom is every week. In heaven, that's why there won't be the temptations. We'll feel God's presence, of course, and all that, because there will be no body. It will be gone. And even if you're great looking, like me, it's still better not to have the body, because it won't be there anymore. So out of the flesh. But Romans 12, 1 and 2, therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice, acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. You go to boot camp. TJ goes to military training. He walks out of that training, he's not the same. There's things that are still with him today. Now, Jesus has taken away the negative things, but there's still certain things probably to do with discipline, probably to do with not fear. Certain things like that are still with him. But the negatives are gone. When a person goes to war and literally is the one that's in combat, because many are not, the majority are not seeing combat, although it's horror for them. And they come back, you have the PTSD. But God can remove that too. I've seen that happen. I've ministered to Vietnam vets and seen the PTSD go. So God can remove it. But they're still a changed person. They're not the same. People that went through the Great Depression, my grandparents and my parents, it affected the rest of their lives, how they handled money, how they didn't throw things away, how they helped the needy, how the needy did not reach out just because they didn't want to work, but they were willing to do what, as they asked for help, they were willing to do something for that money. It affects who they are. There's a great effect upon them. And whatever experience you have, positive or negative, when you go into a battle, those that have gone to mission trips with me where it's been very tough, but they've also seen great miracles. Pastor Michael went the very first time I went overseas. There's still something in him that never changed, never went back. He was different in some area. Now, when he came back, just like me, he says, man, this is me now. I learned like about 80, 90% of that goes. It doesn't stay. But there are 10 to 20% that becomes who you are. And those that have traveled with me know that. Well, when you come off of something like a fast, you are different. You are different. You'll say, I'm back to temptations, I'm back to certain things, and it's very difficult, and I thought it would be all gone. No, it won't. But you have changed. There's things about you that will never be the same unless you totally fall away and rebel against God. You're changed in those areas. You may not know what those areas are for a while. One of the things that I find myself, and I think others that go with me, and I go into these poorer than poor countries, is you come back and you see that I used to spoil my kids and grandkids with monies and presents for Christmas and birthdays. That's still important for me, but nothing like it was before when I see children that have nothing, not a toy, sometimes not even clothes. It just changes you. So I want to encourage you as you go through things with God, He will remove the negatives. You won't be totally what you thought you would be, but you will be different in a good way. I don't care if it's prayer, fasting, time alone with God, tough choices, or you went through something in life and you hung on to Him during that time when it was very, very difficult to hold on. So be encouraged by that Romans 12, 1 and 2, you're not conformed to the world as much as you used to be. You see things differently. You have a different view of things. And I want to encourage you too that the temptations were there. Just don't be foolish. 2 Peter 2:22 states, it has happened to them according to the true proverb. A dog returns to its own vomit, and a sow after washing returning to wallowing in the mire. Don't go back to that filth, whatever that represented in your life. You will struggle. You won't be perfect, but don't go back to that. Don't be that dog or that pig. The fast is 40 days. There's part of you that wanted you to keep going, but you couldn't. You knew physically you couldn't do it. You couldn't stay. There's part of you that wanted to do a lot of things, but you didn't endure. God makes things. I had calls from away from here and in here saying, can we continue the prayer nights? I said, no. It's time for a new season. Get alone with God yourself. Don't depend upon each other as much. And it's just as hard on me as others. But there's part of me too that really was eager to be alone more with Him. And so there's a reason why it's 40 days, because He takes us from different seasons to different seasons, whatever it may be in your life. You're not always the same. See, all of us have this idea when you're young, you're starting your life, this is going to be my life. Duh, 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 duh. That's it. How's that worked out for you, Eric? Kind of goes like this, huh? Yeah. We can all relate. It doesn't go, we're wandering like Jesus did in the wilderness. It kind of goes all over, and we have to make adjustments. And there's times we say, God, why did you close that door? God, why didn't you let that? Maybe it was a career opportunity. Maybe it was someone you wanted to marry. Whatever it may be, why did that door not open? Then sometimes there's a tragedy, like there's a physical injury, or somebody you really love goes through something and never quite gets out of that situation. So life changes. And it continues to change. But Psalm 109:24, this is Jesus. In Psalm 109, it's about the betrayal of Judas and all this stuff. In Psalm 109:24, it's Jesus is saying, my knees are weak from fasting and my flesh has grown lean without fatness. You know what that tells me? Jesus fasted on and off all of His life. He didn't say, okay, I did it here and that's it. We always hear the 40 days. Because he understood the importance to going back to prayer, fasting, fellowship, worship, those basics of Christianity. He understood the importance. And so we need to, just because we're done doesn't mean we're done. You'll have to wait until the next time God allows it. I'm praying, God, can we do this once a year? Or maybe you guys do it once a year. But whatever it may be, I don't know. But I want to tell you something. There are shock waves. Like an earthquake hits and then shock waves go out day after day, tremors. There are shock waves from this that will continue. And they'll continue and continue in your life. They can continue for years because God is the Alpha and the Omega. And what he started in you in the Alpha, he's going to continue it in the Omega. You may see something. I've seen testimonies of, I heard a testimony once of this man. He said that when he was a kid, he felt bad for a missionary. What he was going through, he sold his bicycle and gave the money to missions. And went on with his life, quite a sacrifice for a kid. And years later, this guy come up to him and dropped the keys of a brand new car in his hands. And he didn't want to take it. And the Lord said, there's your bicycle back. God doesn't forget those things because he's a loving Father. He'll definitely reward us in heaven, but you don't know what he's going to do down here. So if you don't see aftershocks the way you think that you want them, they're coming. And as I said the other day in prayer, in a prayer night, I talked about God throwing a rock in the pond, or you throwing a rock in the pond, or however you want to say it, and then it ripples out. But what I said is you're the rock. You're what's been thrown into the pond to cause the rippling effect. So God is saying, I believe there's a change, whether you're involved a little bit or not at all, even because you have people that love you that were involved. And God understands all that. And there's also a part of us that says we're waiting. We see certain signs and we're just kind of looking. Is God going to work in this area of my life or this area or this blessing or whatever? He will. He will. Just don't go be the pig or the dog. I'm not saying you won't. I'm not saying you're not going to be perfect. That you'll be perfect. But I'm saying don't be the pig or the dog and go back to the vomit. Your own vomit. But God says there are aftershocks. And it isn't a perfect world yet. It won't be till the day you die. But God is moving. You have changed. Not as much as you thought you did, but you've changed. I would say at least 10, 20% of you will not be the same. I'm talking about it just like I told you from experience. Been there many times. This is what goes on. And there's things I told you about the fast before you went on it. Things I told you about when you first came off. And you begin to say, oh, Pastor was kind of right, huh? This is, I'm telling you, to encourage you and to help you with where you're at. Don't leave the battle. Don't leave the battle. Doesn't mean you have to be right in the thick of it, but don't leave the battle. But somebody quoted the scripture, if I run with footmen and they tired you out, then how can you compete with horses? If you fall down the land of peace, how will you do in the thicket of the Jordan? I believe you were in the thicket of Jordan for 40 days. You may not physically, but I believe spiritually you were in a battle. Now you're more in the land of peace, enjoy it, but you can still shoot those missiles at the enemy far off. Even a rifle shoots far away. Or if you're like me, a bow and arrow. No, more like John. So God bless you, and whether you're on it or not, know these are principles of the way God works. When you make choices in God to spend time with Him, or to be in His Word, or to be in His prayer, or to spend time in worship, or time together in fellowship, and whatever it is, all of those things make a difference. Because sometimes you say, well, I go to church and I go and I feel better, and then it kind of fades away. Those times in church build up and affect you over the years. God bless you. Let's worship the Lord.